Step right up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, as we show 5 real freaks of the world. Now, although calling them freaks sounds mean, the word freak means someone or something with an abnormality, and it's only in today's world it's somehow been changed into a sort of insult, but this video is in no way insulting any of the people involved. Let's first start with Prince Randian, the human caterpillar. He was born in 1871 and brought to the US in 1889. He was best known for his fame whilst performing for P.T. Barnum, an American showman and businessman who founded the Barnum and Bailey Circus. Despite being born without arms or legs, Randian was incredibly self-sufficient and could perform tasks that would seem impossible for a man with no limbs. At P.T. Barnum's circus, he would demonstrate his ability to shave, paint, write, and even roll cigarettes. But not just roll a cigarette, he was also able to pull a match from its box, strike it, and then smoke the cigarette he had rolled. The crowd would go nuts, and in 1932, Randian had a role in the movie Freaks. Let's take a look at his scene.
My eye and got Madame Tetralini giving us the once-over. I guess she knows she's got a good act, one of the best in the business. It isn't only our act that gets them. We've got personality. We know how to sell the stuff. Same way in the last town. Never heard such applause in your life. Let me tell you something that everybody around here don't know. We're only killing time with this circus. We've got bigger time to follow, and we can do it, too. Well, catch a rack tomorrow night. We got something new.
You can do anything with eyebrow?
You can see why he was a big hit, and despite that unintelligible line, he was actually able to speak several languages, including English, French, German, and Hindi. Randian's typical costume consisted of a striped wool garment, and his main mode of transportation was withering around on the floor in a worm-like fashion. He went on to appear in a variety of carnivals and sideshows, including Coney Island for a 45-year stint. Despite his status as a freak, he was a bright and charming man with a great sense of humour. He was happily married and had 5 children, but sadly in 1943 he died at age 63 after suffering a heart attack following a comeback performance. Simon Metz, the pinhead. Pinheads were staples of circus sideshows and curious freak shows for many years, often billed as forgotten tribes of Aztecs, missing links, and even alien offspring. And throughout the 1920s and 1930s, Simon Metz was known as one of the greatest pinheads around. He suffered from a condition called microcephalus, meaning his cranium was incredibly undeveloped and sat like a baby's head on the shoulders of a grown man. Due to the size of his tiny head, his brain was also extremely underdeveloped, and although his body was aging, his mind was that of a 3-year-old for the rest of his life. But nonetheless, Simon could count to 10, enjoyed singing, and loved to dance and perform to others. In 1932, when Simon was 40 years old, he was featured in the movie Freaks, the same movie as Randian was in. Let's take a look at his performance.
Oh, Schlitzie, what a pretty dress. Oh, how beautiful you look tonight. You're just a man's woman. You know what I mean? Huh? You. If you're a good girl, when I get to Paris, I'm going to buy you a big hat with a long, beautiful feather on it.
I wish you were man. I was just in my time stand.
Why, Schlitzie, what's the matter? Oh, I'm sorry, Schlitzie.
His fame certainly didn't stop there. He continued to tour with the Barnum and Bailey Circus and a variety of other circuses for several years, and he was even the inspiration behind the comic strip Zippy the Pinhead that was featured in the Sunday Funnies. Sadly though, in 1971, Simon died at age 70. The real Two-Face, Edward Mortake. Now, this is probably the most disturbing story. It's that of a man named Edward Mortake. He was a 19th century man who suffered from diprosopus, or cranial duplication. Unfortunately, there are no real pictures of him. This photo may be of him, but it's unsure whether it's a wax figure or not. But anyway, Edward's condition meant that he had a face on the back of his head. But most disturbingly is that it wasn't just a dormant face. It was believed the face on the back of his head could laugh and cry. And Edward reportedly begged doctors to have his demon face removed, as he said the face spoke to him at night. The risk of Edward dying during surgery was too great though, so no doctor would attempt it. Unfortunately, Edward lived in complete seclusion, refusing the visits of even his own family. He was a young, caring man, but due to his condition was very depressed, and although being watched by loved ones, he managed to get his hands on some poison, and at age 23 committed suicide. It's believed that the fact the face would talk to him is what drove him to do so. Edward left a letter requesting that the demon face be destroyed before his burial. "Lest it continues its dreadful whispering in my grave," is what he wrote, and at his own request, he also was buried in a waste place without a stone or legend to mark his grave. Charles Sherwood Stratton. Charles Stratton is perhaps one of the most famous of all sideshow performers, most famously known as General Tom Thumb. He was born in Bridgeport, Connecticut in 1838, and at nearly 5 years old, the great showman P.T. Barnum was on the hunt for Tom Thumb, who pretty much since childbirth had stopped growing and stood only 25 inches tall and weighed 15 pounds. The showman made a deal with the boy's father to pay $3 a week to exhibit young Charles in New York. After his father accepted, P.T. Barnum returned back to New York City to begin promoting his new discovery. Charles travelled with the Barnum Circus for the remainder of his life and became a worldwide celebrity. Tom Thumb married Lavinia Warren, who was only 81 centimeters tall and weighed 13 kilograms. But how much of their relationship was real and how much was arranged by Barnum is up for debate. The couple were, however, married for 20 years, and in 1883, 6 months after a devastating fire at the New Hall house in Milwaukee, which Tom and his wife were close to being killed, Tom Stratton suddenly died of a stroke. He was 45 years old, 102 centimeters tall, and weighed 32 kilograms. Over 20,000 people attended the funeral, including P.T. Barnum, who purchased a life-size statue of Tom Thumb and placed it as a gravestone at Mountain Grove Cemetery in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Eventually, Lavinia Warren also died, and she was laid next to him with a simple gravestone that read, "His wife." The Toki Brothers. Born in 1877, Giacomo and Giovanni Tocci held the Guinness World Record for being the oldest conjoined twins, living to be 63 years old. These unusual Italian twins were joined at the 6th rib. They had one pair of legs and each one could control one leg, but they had separate stomachs, lungs, hearts, respiratory and circulatory systems, meaning bizarrely one could get sick without the other feeling ill. Those who met them often remarked on how surprisingly different the two were. Giovanni liked beer, while Giacomo preferred water. Giovanni could draw, while Giacomo was the more talkative of the two. While their parents were, by all accounts, shocked and horrified at the appearance of their sons, they soon realised that their sons' deformities could make a perfect freak show and started charging people to see them. They first went on tour in Europe and were billed the Two-Headed Boys and the Wonderful Blended Twins. They made it big though when they went to the US, so much so that in 1891 they were making around $1,000 a week, and that was over 100 years ago, so about $25,000 in today's money. Despite their condition, both boys were intelligent, spoke several languages and had an interest in music, but surprisingly they actually got along well. When disagreements did happen though, they were often known to end in a fistfight. Sadly, the twins died in 1940 and are probably the most healthiest examples of conjoined twins in history. So that's 5 freaks of the world. Again, this video is in no way making fun or mocking them in any way, and freaks, aliens, Aztecs, missing links, whatever you want to call them, they all lived their lives to the fullest, and apart from Edward, they were all very happy people who I'm sure were great fun to be around. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this one, I will be doing another video on 5 modern freaks who are still alive and living well, so keep an eye out for that one. Thanks again, and see you next week.